The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Maplewood High School, illuminating rows of wooden desks that were slightly worn from years of use. The math classroom, typically quiet and orderly, was buzzing with the usual chatter of students settling in for their first lesson. Among the students was Alex, a quiet boy who always preferred to sit at the back, blending in with the shadows. He was not loud or boastful, nor did he seek attention from his peers. His hair was neatly combed and his glasses reflected the light as he flipped open his notebook, preparing for the day's lesson. On the surface, he seemed like an ordinary student, just another face in the sea of teenagers. Yet beneath that calm exterior, his mind was quietly calculating, observing, and ready to absorb every detail of the world around him. Mr. Grayson, the math teacher, was pacing at the front of the classroom. He was a man in his late 40s with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Known for his strict rules and occasionally sarcastic remarks, he took pride in keeping his classroom under control. Today, however, he was in a particularly stern mood. He had noticed Alex's reserved demeanor for weeks. While other students would engage in discussions, ask questions, or raise their hands eagerly, Alex remained quiet, often scribbling notes or solving problems silently to himself. Mr. Grayson, frustrated by what he misinterpreted as passivity or lack of effort, decided it was time to wake him up in front of everyone. The teacher turned to the board and began writing an unusually complex equation, one that even some of the brightest students in the class had struggled with in the past. The symbols and numbers formed a pattern that looked like a puzzle, a challenge meant to separate the ordinary from the exceptional. As he wrote, his mind raced with the thought of demonstrating his authority. He imagined the laughter that might follow when Alex failed to solve it. He envisioned the shocked expressions of the students as he mocked the boy's apparent inability to handle such a problem. His smirk grew as he contemplated the scene. Finally, he turned to the class, his eyes locking on Alex. "All right, Alex," he said in a tone meant to draw attention. "Why don't you come up and solve this for us? Let's see if you can handle it." The words were deliberate, carrying a weight of challenge mixed with mockery. A hush fell over the room. Students shifted in their seats, some whispering to one another, others watching in silence, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the air. A few of the more empathetic students exchanged concerned looks. They knew Mr. Grayson's reputation, and they had seen him embarrass others before. They wondered how Alex would respond. Alex looked up from his notebook, his calm gaze meeting the teacher's. There was no panic in his eyes, no sign of fear or hesitation. Instead, there was a quiet focus, a subtle acknowledgement that he had been prepared for challenges much greater than this. He slowly stood, adjusting the strap of his backpack as he made his way toward the front of the room. Each step was measured, deliberate, and confident in its own quiet way. The students watched, a mixture of curiosity and anticipation spreading through the room. No one had expected this quiet boy to step forward so composedly. When Alex reached the board, he picked up the chalk. For a moment he paused, his hand hovering in the air, studying the equation with the same intensity that a chess player might study an opponent's strategy. The classroom was silent except for the soft scratching of pens on paper, as a few students tried to follow along. Mr. Grayson leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. "Well?" he asked, his voice dripping with expectation and barely concealed amusement. "Let's see what you've got. Don't take too long, or we might all fall asleep." Alex began writing. At first, his movements seemed cautious, almost tentative. But as the chalk moved across the board, forming clear lines and calculations, a subtle transformation occurred. His initial hesitation melted into a fluid motion, each symbol and number appearing with precision. The solution began to take shape, not as a guess or trial, but as the product of a mind that was analyzing patterns, predicting outcomes, and connecting ideas at an astonishing speed. The students' eyes widened as they realized that the problem, which had seemed impossible to many of them, was now being untangled with ease. Whispers began to ripple through the room. "Is he really doing it?" one student murmured. "I've tried this equation before and I couldn't even get close," said another. The atmosphere shifted from tension to astonishment. Some students leaned forward, straining to see each step. They had expected a failure, a public embarrassment, and instead they were witnessing something remarkable. Alex's explanation of each step was calm, clear, and surprisingly simple. He broke down complex concepts into understandable parts, almost as if he were teaching a mini-lesson while solving the problem. Mr. Grayson's smirk faltered. He had expected stumbles, confusion, and perhaps a few hesitant mistakes. Instead, Alex was moving confidently, demonstrating understanding that went far beyond the typical classroom level. The teacher's mind raced, realizing he had misjudged the boy entirely. This was not someone who struggled with the basics. This was someone who saw patterns and solutions where others saw only chaos. He felt a mix of surprise, admiration, and, unexpectedly, a twinge of guilt for his initial intention to humiliate Alex. By now, the entire class was watching in stunned silence. Some students had stopped taking notes, unable to keep up with the speed of Alex's reasoning. Others were quietly scribbling, trying to follow along, hoping to capture some of the brilliance unfolding on the board. The room, once heavy with tension and anticipation of embarrassment, was now charged with excitement and awe. Alex continued, each step bringing him closer to completing the solution. It was as if the equation itself was bending to his understanding, unraveling effortlessly under the weight of his intellect. Finally, with a smooth motion, Alex completed the solution. He stepped back, letting the chalk rest on the ledge. The classroom remained silent for a long moment, as though everyone was holding their breath, trying to process what they had just seen. Then slowly a few claps began, hesitant at first, and then more confident as the students realized that they were witnessing genuine genius. Mr. Grayson, for the first time in his teaching career, felt a mixture of humility and astonishment. He had intended to mock, but instead he had discovered a mind capable of extraordinary insight. Alex returned to his seat, calm and composed as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He picked up his pen and notebook, jotting down a few notes as if the earlier display had been nothing more than routine. The students continued to murmur, some still clapping softly, others exchanging wide-eyed glances. A few approached him cautiously during the break, asking questions about how he had arrived at the solution. Alex answered politely, never boasting, always explaining with patience and clarity. Mr. Grayson stood at the front of the room reflecting on the morning's events. He realized that he had learned a powerful lesson about assumptions and the dangers of underestimating others. Alex's quiet demeanor had masked a remarkable ability, and now he knew that intelligence often came in unexpected forms. The teacher felt a mix of pride and regret. Pride for having witnessed such talent, but regret for having intended to humiliate it. From that day on, he vowed to treat all his students with greater respect, recognizing that potential often hides in the most unlikely places. By the end of the period, the atmosphere in the classroom had completely changed. Where there had been tension and judgment, there was now curiosity, respect, and admiration. Alex's classmates looked at him differently, no longer seeing just the quiet boy at the back, but someone capable of brilliance. The story of the morning would be told and retold in whispers and conversations for weeks to come, marking the beginning of a journey that would shape not only Alex's life, but also the way the teacher and his classmates viewed intelligence, potential, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. The classroom remained unusually quiet after Alex returned to his seat. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the buzz of whispered conversations and wide-eyed glances of his classmates. For many of them, this was the first time they had seen someone their age solve a problem that even some of their teachers might hesitate to attempt. The air was thick with curiosity, admiration, and a hint of disbelief. Students who had initially doubted Alex now found themselves watching him, wondering what other abilities he might have hidden behind that quiet, unassuming exterior. Mr. Grayson, meanwhile, was still standing at the front of the room, his mind racing. He had intended to showcase authority, to demonstrate that no student could hide behind silence and still succeed. But the outcome was the exact opposite. Instead of embarrassment, Alex had displayed a level of intelligence that the teacher had not expected. He could not help but feel a mixture of surprise, respect, and a little shame for underestimating the boy. His lesson meant to intimidate had turned into a revelation, forcing him to reconsider not just Alex but the potential of all his students. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, the students slowly packed their bags. The room was alive with soft murmurs and quiet chatter, most of it about Alex's astonishing performance. Some students gathered in small groups, discussing the steps he had taken, pointing to notes and attempting to retrace the solution in their own notebooks. A few of the more daring ones approached him directly, their expressions a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "Alex," one whispered, "how did you even think of doing that step? I've never seen anyone solve it like that before." Alex looked up from his notes, offering a polite smile. "I just looked at the pattern in the numbers," he said softly. "Once you see the relationship, the rest follows naturally. You just have to stay calm and think through it." His voice was steady, unassuming, and carried none of the arrogance that sometimes accompanies exceptional talent. For Alex, solving problems was not about showing off or gaining recognition. It was simply the way his mind worked. To him, mathematics was a language, a way to understand the world and not a tool for competition or pride. Outside the classroom, the whispers continued to spread. Students who had not been present for the lesson were eager to hear the story. By the time lunch arrived, Alex's reputation had grown beyond the math classroom. His peers talked in awe about how he had solved the complex equation with ease and explained each step so clearly. Even those who struggled with math themselves were captivated, fascinated by the idea that someone their age could possess such a sharp mind. The story of the morning's event was now circulating through the entire school like wildfire. Mr. Grayson, for his part, was still grappling with his own thoughts. He walked down the hallway, lost in reflection. He remembered the moment he had singled Alex out, the smug satisfaction he had felt at the prospect of publicly humiliating him. And now he was forced to confront a reality he had not anticipated. Alex's intellect was extraordinary. He felt a wave of humility wash over him. In his years of teaching, he had seen many bright students, but Alex's combination of understanding, clarity, and calmness was rare. He realized he had made an assumption based purely on appearances, a mistake he would not soon forget. During lunch, Alex sat quietly at the edge of the cafeteria, unbothered by the attention. A few classmates approached, eager to discuss math problems or ask questions. Some brought their notebooks, hoping to learn a technique or understand his approach to solving the equation. Alex answered each question patiently, explaining the reasoning behind his methods. He did not boast or demand praise. Instead, he spoke as though it were natural to help others understand. The students quickly realized that his intelligence was matched by humility and kindness, qualities that made him even more remarkable. Meanwhile, other teachers had begun to hear about the incident. Mrs. Caldwell, the school's science teacher, had overheard students talking about the equation and Alex's incredible performance. She was intrigued and wanted to see for herself what had happened. Later that day, she found Alex in the library, quietly working on another set of challenging problems. She approached him, introducing herself and asking if he would explain some of his techniques. Alex, always polite, agreed without hesitation. The two spent the afternoon discussing complex concepts, and Mrs. Caldwell was impressed not only by his knowledge but also by the clarity with which he communicated his ideas. Word of Alex's genius spread beyond the school walls. Parents of students, curious teachers, and even local educators began to inquire about him. Some wanted to challenge him with additional problems. Others hoped to involve him in academic competitions or enrichment programs. Despite the sudden attention, Alex remained grounded. He never sought the spotlight, preferring to focus on learning, understanding, and solving problems. His parents, too, were both proud and careful, supporting his curiosity while encouraging him to maintain a balanced life. They understood that nurturing talent required patience and care, not pressure or expectation. Back in his math classroom, Mr. Grayson had spent the rest of the day reflecting on his teaching methods. He realized that his attempt to mock Alex had inadvertently highlighted the very thing he should have been fostering: curiosity, engagement, and confidence. The experience had taught him a valuable lesson in humility and respect. From that moment on, he approached each student differently, paying attention not only to behavior but also to potential, encouraging everyone to develop their skills without judgment or ridicule. He became more patient, more observant, and more willing to recognize hidden talent. Alex's classmates, inspired by his performance, began to approach learning with renewed interest. Some who had previously struggled with mathematics discovered that they could understand difficult concepts when explained clearly and patiently. Others, motivated by Alex's example, began to put more effort into studying, realizing that talent and hard work could produce amazing results. The classroom dynamic shifted. What had once been a space of tension and competition became one of curiosity, collaboration, and mutual respect. Students were no longer focused on showing off or mocking others. Instead, they were inspired to learn, grow, and challenge themselves. Over the next few weeks, Alex continued to impress both his teachers and classmates. He participated in small academic competitions, often solving problems that had stumped others. His approach was methodical, patient, and consistently precise. He shared his strategies with peers, helping them to improve without ever seeking recognition or reward. Teachers noticed that his presence in the classroom had a positive impact on others, fostering a culture of learning that went beyond grades and examinations. Through it all, Alex remained humble. He did not flaunt his abilities or seek attention. Instead, he focused on his own learning, quietly excelling while helping others along the way. His story became a quiet inspiration, demonstrating that intelligence combined with humility could create a positive ripple effect in any community. Even Mr. Grayson, once skeptical and critical, came to respect and admire the boy not only for his intellect but also for his character. By the end of the month, the incident in the classroom had become a defining moment for Maplewood High. Alex's name was spoken with admiration in both classrooms and hallways. Teachers used his approach as an example when explaining complex concepts, and students were encouraged to see learning as a process of understanding rather than a competition. Alex, for his part, continued to move through his days with the same quiet confidence, never letting attention distract him from the joy of discovery. His performance had changed the way people viewed intelligence, potential, and the importance of nurturing talent with care and respect. In reflection, that morning in the math classroom had been more than just a lesson in solving a difficult equation. It had been a lesson for everyone present, students, teachers, and even the boy himself. It showed that underestimating someone based on appearances could lead to missed opportunities, and that true genius often comes quietly, waiting for the right moment to shine. It reminded everyone that respect, patience, and encouragement could bring out the best in people, sometimes in ways that no one could have predicted. The classroom, once filled with tension and anticipation of failure, had transformed into a space of inspiration. Alex's calm, methodical approach to the problem had sparked curiosity, admiration, and a new understanding of what it meant to learn and excel. The incident was no longer just about a single equation. It had become a story of growth, humility, and the power of hidden potential. For Alex, it was another step in a journey of discovery, one that would continue to unfold quietly, brilliantly, and with a lasting impact on everyone around him. The day after the math classroom incident, the atmosphere at Maplewood High was buzzing with excitement. Students walked through the hallways in clusters, whispering, laughing softly, and exchanging the story of Alex's remarkable display of intelligence. Even those who were usually disinterested in math found themselves drawn into conversations about how he had solved the complex equation so quickly and clearly. It was as if the quiet, reserved boy had suddenly become the center of the school's attention. Not because he sought it, but because his actions had earned it. Alex, however, remained completely unaffected by the sudden admiration. He moved through his day with the same calm, measured steps as always, carrying his backpack neatly on his shoulder and keeping his head down when necessary. To him, the equation had been just another problem, nothing more or less. But he was aware that things had changed. Students who had once ignored him were now watching him, some with awe, others with curiosity, and a few with envy. Despite this, he focused on his lessons, carefully listening to each teacher and completing every assignment to the best of his ability. In his next math class, Mr. Grayson noticed something unusual. The students, who usually squirmed under his scrutiny, seemed unusually attentive, almost respectful. Even the chatter that typically filled the room before he began teaching was absent. It was clear that Alex's display had shifted the dynamic of the class. Mr. Grayson, standing at the front, felt a mixture of pride and unease. Pride because his student had shown exceptional talent. Unease because he had underestimated that talent and had almost embarrassed someone capable of far more than he had realized. As the lesson progressed, Mr. Grayson decided to test Alex again, though this time with a different approach. He wrote a new, challenging problem on the board, but instead of mocking, he presented it as a genuine opportunity for Alex to demonstrate his understanding. "Alex," he said calmly, "I would like you to attempt this. Take your time and show us your method." There was no sarcasm, no expectation of failure, just an honest invitation to explore. Alex looked up, nodded politely, and began working. His movements were precise, deliberate, and fluid. The students watched intently, and even the teacher felt a sense of awe as Alex quickly navigated the complex problem. What happened next surprised everyone. Alex not only solved the equation but did so in multiple ways, presenting alternative methods that were both creative and efficient. Each step was explained clearly, as if he were teaching the class rather than merely answering a question. The students' faces lit up with amazement. Some jotted down notes frantically, eager to remember the techniques. Others whispered to friends, trying to comprehend the speed and depth of understanding Alex displayed. Even Mr. Grayson, who had been teaching for years, felt a mix of pride and humility. He realized that Alex's abilities were exceptional in every sense of the word. By the end of the class, a quiet murmur of appreciation filled the room. Students who had once doubted Alex's abilities now looked at him with respect. Some approached him after class, asking for explanations on parts they had struggled with. Alex answered patiently, never showing irritation or impatience. To him, helping others understand was part of the learning process, a natural extension of his own curiosity and knowledge. His humility made him even more remarkable. His peers were not just impressed by his intelligence but also by his kindness and willingness to share it. Word of Alex's genius reached beyond the classroom. Teachers in other subjects began to notice his talent. Mrs. Caldwell, the science teacher, spoke highly of him during a faculty meeting, emphasizing not only his aptitude for problem-solving, but also his maturity and thoughtfulness. Other students, hearing about Alex from classmates in different classes, began seeking him out for advice, tutoring, or simply to witness the boy whose quiet intelligence had captured the school's attention. Slowly, Alex became known not just for solving difficult equations, but for inspiring others to reach higher in their own studies. Meanwhile, Mr. Grayson reflected on his own actions. He had thought he was preparing to demonstrate authority, to remind students that no one could escape scrutiny in his classroom. Instead, he had inadvertently highlighted an extraordinary mind. The incident forced him to reconsider his approach to teaching. He realized that his sarcasm and rigid expectations had often discouraged students, making them fearful rather than curious. Alex had reminded him of the power of encouragement, the importance of observing each student's potential, and the need to nurture talent rather than belittle it. From that moment, he began to adjust his teaching style, offering guidance and support while challenging students in a way that encouraged learning rather than fear. The changes were subtle but noticeable. Students felt more comfortable asking questions, exploring creative approaches, and sharing their ideas without the fear of ridicule. Alex, though still quiet and reserved, became a central figure in this new learning environment. He inspired his peers not just by solving difficult problems, but by demonstrating that intelligence and humility could coexist. Others began to emulate his calm, focused approach, finding that patience and careful reasoning often produced better results than rushed or distracted efforts. Outside the classroom, Alex's reputation continued to grow. Parents of students approached his teachers, curious to learn more about him and his abilities. Local educators took notice as well, inviting him to participate in math circles, competitions, and workshops designed for talented students. Despite this growing attention, Alex remained grounded. He continued to focus on learning, helping others, and exploring new challenges quietly and thoughtfully. Recognition and praise did not change his character. Instead, he used these opportunities to deepen his understanding and refine his skills. Alex's classmates, who had initially doubted or ignored him, experienced a shift in perspective. Some who had struggled with math began to see it as an approachable subject, realizing that difficult problems could be solved with careful thought and clear reasoning. Others, motivated by Alex's success, put more effort into their studies, discovering that talent alone was not enough. Persistence, focus, and a willingness to learn were equally important. The classroom had transformed from a place of competition and anxiety into one of curiosity, collaboration, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as the school day ended, a group of students gathered around Alex in the library. They had brought textbooks, notes, and problems they had struggled with. Alex, one said, "Could you help me understand this? I've been stuck for days." Alex nodded, taking a seat beside them. He patiently explained each step, guiding them through the problem without ever making them feel inadequate. The students were amazed not just by his intellect but by his ability to teach, to make complex ideas understandable and approachable. The experience left them inspired, eager to tackle challenges they had once considered impossible. Mr. Grayson, observing quietly from a distance, felt a deep sense of pride and humility. He had intended to mock, to challenge, and perhaps even embarrass Alex. Instead, he had discovered a student whose genius not only excelled in mathematics, but also uplifted the entire classroom. The experience reminded him that teaching was not merely about conveying knowledge. It was about recognizing potential, nurturing it, and creating an environment where students could thrive. He vowed to carry this lesson forward in every class, ensuring that every student had the chance to shine in their own way. As weeks passed, Alex continued to demonstrate his remarkable abilities. He solved increasingly difficult problems, participated in local and regional competitions, and inspired his classmates to pursue excellence. His quiet confidence, humility, and willingness to help others made him not only a brilliant student, but also a role model for the entire school. Teachers, students, and even parents began to see that intelligence could manifest in many ways, and that fostering curiosity and respect was far more valuable than harsh judgment or ridicule. By the end of the term, Alex's name was well known throughout Maplewood High. His story, the quiet boy at the back of the classroom who had amazed everyone with his genius, had become a symbol of the potential hidden in unexpected places. Students and teachers alike were reminded that assumptions could be misleading, and that true talent often reveals itself when least expected. Alex's journey continued, marked by learning, discovery, and quiet inspiration, leaving a lasting impression on everyone around him. The morning that had begun with mockery and tension had transformed into a powerful lesson for all. It was no longer about a single equation, a single class, or even a single student. It was about potential, respect, humility, and the importance of nurturing talent in a supportive environment. Alex's actions had created a ripple effect, changing not only the perception of a single student but also the entire culture of learning within his school. It was a lesson in the power of intelligence, character, and the quiet strength that comes from curiosity and patience. By the time the next week arrived, Alex's remarkable performance had made a lasting impression on everyone at Maplewood High. Students and teachers alike were still talking about the day he solved the complex equation in front of the class. But the impact went far beyond simple admiration. It had shifted the way people viewed not only Alex, but the potential that often hides quietly in students who might seem ordinary on the surface. In the morning, Alex walked into his math class with the usual calm and measured pace. His backpack hung neatly from his shoulder, and he carried his notebook and pens with care. Though he had gained attention, he did not let it change the way he approached school. He preferred focus over fanfare, understanding over recognition. His classmates, however, were eager to see him, some nudging one another with excited whispers, others leaning forward with notebooks open, hoping to catch even a glimpse of the methods he might use during the lesson. Mr. Grayson, now more mindful of his actions, welcomed Alex to the board once again, but this time with genuine encouragement. "Alex," he said, "I have a challenge for you. Let's see if you can explain your reasoning on this problem. Take your time and show us your thought process." There was no mockery in his tone, no expectation of failure, only curiosity and respect. The room was silent, the air thick with anticipation. Students who had doubted Alex or ignored him before now waited eagerly, ready to learn from someone they recognized as extraordinary. Alex approached the board, chalk in hand, his eyes scanning the problem. His movements were deliberate, careful, but confident. As he began solving, it became clear that his talent extended beyond simple calculation. He could see patterns, relationships, and solutions that others overlooked entirely. With every step, he explained the reasoning behind it, using simple terms that even students struggling with math could understand. The classroom was captivated. Whispers of admiration spread like wildfire, and students jotted down notes, hoping to understand not just the answer, but the way Alex thought. Some students who had previously struggled with confidence began to feel inspired. They realized that difficulty in solving problems did not mean they lacked intelligence. It meant they had not yet learned the right approach or had not been guided properly. Watching Alex work, they understood that intelligence was not only about speed or memorization. It was about thinking clearly, staying patient, and understanding the logic behind each step. Even the students who had once teased or doubted him felt a sense of awe and respect, seeing firsthand the power of dedication and focus. After class, a small group of students gathered around Alex, notebooks in hand, eager to ask questions. "How do you figure out which step to take first?" one asked. Alex smiled politely. "I look at the patterns in the numbers," he explained gently. "Once you understand how the pieces fit together, the rest follows naturally. The key is to stay calm and think clearly." Another student asked about a different problem, and Alex walked them through it patiently, demonstrating that his genius was not only in solving problems but also in teaching and guiding others. Meanwhile, word of Alex's abilities had begun to spread beyond the classroom. Teachers in other subjects had heard about his remarkable problem-solving skills and his ability to explain concepts clearly. Some approached him privately, curious to see if his talents extended beyond math. Mrs. Caldwell, the science teacher, invited him to assist with a small research project, hoping to engage his analytical thinking. Alex accepted politely, enjoying the opportunity to apply his skills in new ways. The project became a success, with Alex contributing innovative ideas that impressed both students and faculty alike. Mr. Grayson, observing the growing respect and influence Alex had on his peers, began reflecting deeply on his own actions. He remembered how he had attempted to mock the boy, thinking it would teach him a lesson or assert his authority. Instead, he had witnessed a talent and character that far exceeded his expectations. The experience taught him the dangers of assumptions, the importance of patience, and the value of nurturing talent instead of trying to control it. He realized that teaching was not simply about authority or discipline. It was about guidance, support, and recognizing the potential within each student. The change in Mr. Grayson's attitude was noticeable. He began encouraging all students, paying attention to those who seemed quiet or reserved, recognizing that potential often hides in unexpected places. He stopped mocking students or creating challenges solely to test their reactions, focusing instead on helping them grow. The classroom atmosphere shifted. Students felt more comfortable asking questions, making mistakes, and exploring creative solutions. Alex, while still quiet and unassuming, became a natural leader by example, inspiring his classmates to approach learning with curiosity, patience, and focus. Outside of class, Alex's story began to attract attention from the wider community. Parents of students approached teachers, curious about the boy whose talents seemed extraordinary. Local educators and academic programs began inviting him to participate in competitions, workshops, and enrichment programs designed for gifted students. Each opportunity provided Alex with new challenges, which he met with the same calm intelligence that had impressed his peers and teachers. Despite the attention, he remained grounded, focused on learning and discovery rather than recognition or praise. Back at school, the ripple effect of Alex's actions became clear. Students who had once feared math or doubted their own abilities began to approach problems differently. They asked questions, sought help, and explored alternative methods for solving difficult equations. Even those who had been indifferent or uninterested in academics found inspiration in Alex's example. He demonstrated that intelligence and diligence combined with humility could change not only one person's life, but also influence an entire community of learners. Parents noticed the change as well. Conversations at home shifted from complaints about difficult homework to curiosity about learning and problem-solving. Children, motivated by Alex's example, began asking more questions, practicing more diligently, and discussing ideas with friends and family. Teachers reported that classes had become more lively, engaged, and collaborative. What had started as a single incident in a math classroom had grown into a culture of learning, curiosity, and mutual respect throughout the school. Even Mr. Grayson, once stern and sarcastic, began to embrace this new perspective. He worked to create an environment where students felt supported and encouraged to take intellectual risks. He highlighted the importance of patience, understanding, and careful reasoning in learning. Alex's quiet brilliance had not only inspired his classmates, but had also transformed the teacher, reminding him that humility and respect were as important as knowledge in education. As weeks turned into months, Alex continued to excel academically while helping others grow. He participated in local math competitions, consistently demonstrating innovative solutions and clear reasoning. His influence extended beyond math. Students began to approach challenges in science, literature, and other subjects with the same curiosity and patience they had observed in him. Alex's calm, focused approach had become a model for learning and personal growth. By the end of the term, Alex's story had reached nearly every corner of the school. He was recognized not only for his extraordinary intellect, but also for his humility, patience, and willingness to help others. The students who had once doubted him now looked up to him with respect, eager to learn from his methods and emulate his approach to problem-solving. Teachers, too, had changed, becoming more attentive, encouraging, and mindful of each student's potential. Reflecting on the journey, it was clear that the morning in the math classroom had been far more than a lesson in solving a difficult equation. It had been a lesson for everyone present, students, teachers, and the boy himself. It demonstrated the power of intelligence, patience, and humility. It highlighted the dangers of underestimating others and the transformative effect that encouragement, respect, and recognition can have on a person's growth. Alex continued to move through his days with quiet confidence. He focused on learning, helping his classmates, and exploring new challenges. The attention he had gained did not distract him. It motivated him to refine his skills, deepen his understanding, and apply his knowledge in creative ways. His story became an ongoing inspiration, reminding everyone that genius often appears quietly, and that the right guidance and support can unlock extraordinary potential. By the time the next school year approached, Alex had become more than just a brilliant student. He had become a symbol of perseverance, intelligence, and humility. His journey illustrated the power of curiosity, the importance of patience and learning, and the lasting impact one person can have on an entire community. The once ordinary boy who had been singled out to be mocked had not only shown his genius but had changed the culture of learning at Maplewood High forever. By the time the final months of the school year arrived, Alex's story had become more than just a classroom legend. It had become a source of inspiration for the entire school. Students, teachers, and even parents were talking about the quiet boy who had solved a complex equation with ease and humility. The initial shock and amazement had grown into something deeper: respect, admiration, and a recognition that talent and character could make a lasting impact. Alex himself remained calm, focused on learning and discovery, never seeking the attention or recognition that followed him. Teachers began to notice that Alex's influence extended far beyond math class. Students who had previously struggled academically now approached him for guidance. Alex never refused, always taking the time to explain problems step by step, making complex concepts understandable. His patience and clarity created an environment in which others felt comfortable asking questions without fear of judgment. Students were no longer afraid to make mistakes. Instead, they began to see challenges as opportunities to learn. In this way, Alex's quiet genius had transformed not only the classroom but also the entire school culture. Mr. Grayson, the math teacher who had once attempted to embarrass him, continued to reflect on his actions and their consequences. The experience had been humbling. He realized that intelligence comes in many forms, and that judging a student by appearances or assumptions could lead to missed opportunities. Over time, he began to adjust his teaching methods, focusing more on encouragement, observation, and guidance rather than authority and sarcasm. He encouraged his students to explore their talents, emphasizing that patience, persistence, and curiosity were just as important as knowledge itself. Alex's accomplishments began to attract attention outside of the school. Local academic competitions invited him to participate, and he quickly demonstrated his exceptional abilities. He solved problems that challenged even older students and adults, earning praise from organizers and participants alike. Yet, despite the recognition, Alex remained humble. He did not boast about his success or let it change his demeanor. Instead, he continued to focus on learning, enjoying the process of discovery and understanding, rather than seeking fame or accolades. His classmates, inspired by his example, began to approach their studies differently. They realized that intelligence was not about showing off or being the fastest, but about thinking clearly, being patient, and working steadily. They learned that asking questions and seeking guidance was not a weakness, but a path to growth. Some students, motivated by Alex's example, began to participate in competitions themselves, testing their limits and discovering talents they had not known they possessed. Alex had unknowingly created a culture of curiosity, perseverance, and mutual support that spread throughout the school. Parents also noticed the change. Children who had once resisted homework or avoided challenging subjects were now more eager to engage in learning. Conversations at home shifted from complaints about difficult problems to curiosity and discussion. Families began to explore educational opportunities together, inspired by the example of Alex's humility, patience, and dedication. His influence had extended beyond the classroom, encouraging a broader appreciation for learning, growth, and the joy of understanding new ideas. Even Mr. Grayson continued to grow as a teacher. He watched his students more carefully, seeking out hidden potential and encouraging quieter or less confident students to participate. He emphasized collaboration and understanding, rather than competition and judgment. The classroom that had once been tense and stressful had transformed into a space where students felt safe to explore, experiment, and challenge themselves. Alex's quiet influence had helped Mr. Grayson become a better teacher, and in turn, that benefited every student he encountered. Over time, Alex began to participate in more advanced programs outside of school. He was invited to workshops, academic conferences, and regional math competitions. Each opportunity was met with excitement, but he approached every challenge with the same calm, thoughtful demeanor that had first amazed his classmates. He excelled not because he sought recognition, but because he loved learning and solving problems. His consistent humility, coupled with his brilliance, made him admired not just for his abilities but for his character as well. At school, students who had once underestimated or ignored him now saw Alex as a role model. They admired not only his intelligence but also his kindness, patience, and willingness to help others. His quiet confidence inspired many to reevaluate their own attitudes toward learning. They discovered that effort, persistence, and careful thinking often mattered as much as talent, and that mistakes were opportunities to improve rather than sources of shame. The school had changed, in large part because one student had quietly demonstrated the power of focus, humility, and excellence. The recognition Alex received was not just academic. Teachers and administrators began to involve him in mentoring programs, helping other students develop critical thinking skills. Alex excelled in this role, explaining complex concepts in simple, understandable ways, and encouraging students to find their own solutions. He never pushed his peers, never imposed his methods, and never demanded recognition. His calm, patient approach made students feel empowered, building confidence that often lasted far beyond the classroom. By the end of the school year, Alex had become a symbol of inspiration and possibility. His story was shared not only within classrooms but also at school assemblies, in newsletters, and among the wider community. Parents, teachers, and students told the story of the quiet boy at the back of the classroom who had been underestimated, only to reveal a mind capable of extraordinary insight. The story was celebrated not because it was about one person's brilliance, but because it highlighted the potential in all students when given respect, encouragement, and guidance. Even Mr. Grayson, once determined to embarrass Alex, had learned an invaluable lesson. He had been reminded that humility and respect were as important as knowledge, and that teaching was about nurturing growth, not asserting authority. His approach to education shifted permanently. He paid attention to quieter students, encouraged risk-taking and problem-solving, and emphasized that learning was a journey to be explored, not a competition to be won. In doing so, he became a better teacher for all his students thanks to the example Alex had set. Alex's influence extended beyond academics. His character, humility, and willingness to help others inspired a culture of respect, collaboration, and curiosity. Students were more willing to work together, share ideas, and support one another in their studies. Mistakes were seen as learning opportunities, questions were welcomed, and intellectual curiosity became a valued quality. The quiet boy who had been singled out for mockery had, in fact, transformed the environment around him in ways that no one could have predicted. Over the next several years, Alex continued to excel, earning recognition in regional and national competitions, but always maintaining his grounded approach. His story became an example of how humility, intelligence, and a willingness to help others could leave a lasting impact. Teachers, students, and parents remembered the day he solved the impossible equation, not just for the brilliance he displayed, but for the lessons it taught about respect, patience, and the importance of recognizing potential in everyone. Looking back, the event in the classroom was more than just a single incident, it was a turning point. It had changed the perceptions of students and teachers alike, inspired a culture of learning, and demonstrated the profound impact that one person's talent and character could have on a community. Alex had taught everyone around him that intelligence could be quiet, humility could be powerful, and that encouragement and respect could unlock extraordinary potential. By the time he graduated, Alex had become a figure of inspiration at Maplewood High. Students still spoke of his calm confidence, his brilliance, and the way he had transformed the learning environment. Teachers continued to share his story with new students, reminding them that talent often appears quietly, and that curiosity, patience, and humility can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Alex had left a legacy not only of achievement but of character, inspiring generations of students to believe in themselves, work hard, and help others along the way. The quiet boy at the back of the classroom had become a symbol of possibility. His story showed that one act, approaching a challenge calmly, thinking carefully and acting with humility, could ripple outward, affecting everyone around him. It was a story about intelligence, character, and the transformative power of encouragement. And it was a reminder that every student, no matter how quiet or unassuming, might hold brilliance just waiting for the right moment to shine.